It's just like such a competitive environment to get these jobs. And I just wish I knew that like my skills and like doing corporate finance and having more of an entrepreneurial mind, like it would have fit somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. Like, it's so crazy because and I don't know if this was true with you, but nowadays, like, people like the recruitment process for a 2025 internship was happening during like January 2024. So like it was happening during the winter of my sophomore year for the internship that will be going into my senior year of college. Like, it is crazy. So all of a sudden, you have a bunch of sophomores that are just like enjoying their transition into college, and all of a sudden everyone's just in suits and attending like networking events and higher views and super days, and it's just crazy how it all hits you at once. But you got to do it because that's like it just feels like that's what everyone is doing, so you don't want to miss out on it, you know?
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
What's going on, everybody? This is CJ, the host of Run the Numbers, your favorite finance podcast, business podcast, career pod, whatever you want to call it. This is a special mailbag edition. I have Intern Charlie on the show. Can you believe that? We are now big enough to have an intern. First, we're number 3 in Botswana on the list. Then we get to number 2 in Costa Rica. I believe we were number 1 in Afghanistan in the careers chart for a couple weeks. Now, you know, we're going global here. We were on the New York Stock Exchange. We recorded a couple podcasts there, and now we have an intern to get us coffee. Just kidding. This because it's all virtual. But he's the man. He comes on and he throws a bunch of questions my way that the listeners submitted. So thank you for that. And something fun that we're doing here. Do you like Yeti mugs? Do you like Run the Numbers? Go to your company's Slack or Microsoft Teams channel and tell your coworkers to check out the pod. Send us a pic via email to cj@mostlymetrics.com and we'll hook you up with a show branded Yeti mug. I'm not quite sure if this will make me absolutely broke because they're like $85 each. So consider this my experiment in customer acquisition costs and CAC payback period. That's cj@mostlymetrics.com. Share it with a big ass group. Woo woo! All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Oh yeah! Go to planful.com/metrics to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. That's planful.com/metrics. Mercury knows your financial operations are complex. Founders and finance teams have to pull together different tools, reconcile transactions from different sources, and struggle to get accurate answers. With Mercury, you can simplify your operations with banking and software that power your critical financial workflows, all within the one thing every business needs, a bank account. And with new bill pay and accounting capabilities, you can pay bills faster, stay in control of company spend, and speed up reconciliation. Apply in minutes at Mercury.com and join over 200,000, ambitious startups that trust Mercury to provide the precision, control, and focus they need to transform their financial workflows so they can perform at their best. Mercury, the art of simplified finances. Mercury is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services provided by Choice Financial Group and Evolve Bank and Trust. Members FDIC. I'm getting good at that voice. We're back. Run the Numbers podcast. We have a special guest here for this mailbag edition. We've got Intern Charlie. Charlie, what's going on, man?
What's going on, CJ? I've watched a lot of these episodes and really great to be a part of one. So
two funny things. One, before we started, Charlie asked me if I have a cat. I said no. That's my baby downstairs that's just crying and screaming. So you truly are like a college student without any exposure to like what life is in the real world. And then the second thing is one of Charlie's tasks during the summer is each morning he has to listen to one prior episode of Run the Numbers, find all the links for me on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and then tease out a bunch of bullet points of what I could potentially write about for Mostly Metrics. And I'm pretty sure I'm living rent-free in your head right now, Charlie.
Yeah, I pretty much hear CJ's voice in the back of my mind at all times at this point. But no, yeah, it's been great. It's a good excuse to watch all of them and soak it all in.
And I gave you a task of getting one person per day to give it 5 stars. How deep into your friend groups have you had to go at this point?
I'm reaching at this point. I am getting so I'm like asking my coworkers at work to like give 5 stars on some guy's podcast. They're like, "What the hell is this?" Yeah, it was
because you're working at a restaurant too this summer, right?
Yeah, exactly. On the weekends, I'm waiting tables, so literally I was like sending links to my server friends. Yeah, no, it was easy at first. I like hit up my 10 closest friends, my mom, whatever, and now I'm 5, 6, 7 weeks in, and it's getting gritty. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've definitely fallen off a little bit on that, but we'll get it back.
Yeah, I think Spotify is still under 100. You got to get it to 100 before the summer is closed. Please give us 5 stars because I will punish intern Charlie if you don't. So do it to help Charlie.
Please.
What's been your favorite episode so far out of the ones you've listened to?
I loved episode 9, Why You Should Say Yes More as a CFO with Envoy CFO Sano. Is that how you say it? Terrero?
Sanoe.
Yeah. Terrero, yeah. That was my favorite one.
So are you going into your senior year at BC?
Junior. I'm gonna be junior, yeah. Junior
year. You're so much more useful than I was when I was an intern. So I went to BC too. And I was like a box of rocks at my internship. I couldn't operate a spreadsheet. I couldn't do anything. So I have to commend you. You are actually useful in adding value.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been good reps. Just like my Excel skills are pretty bad, so it's a good excuse just to play around with it a little bit and try to offer some value. Yeah, appreciate that, CJ.
I also had you read through a bunch of 10Ks, didn't I?
Yeah, that one, the project I did with you on customer metrics, I had to go through 10Ks, and like most 10Ks will say like we define a customer, so it's pretty easy. You just like Command F, we define, and I can find it. But some of them I had to really dig. So yeah, I was on Edgar and like on the investor relations page of a lot of different software companies. It was cool.
Wise beyond your years. All right, so we asked people on Twitter and on Substack for some questions. We've aggregated them here. Charlie, you want to throw one at me and we can just rip through this list and see if anything's good?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so at what stage of a company does equity equate to real money in your pockets? Obviously, the value of earlier stage companies is higher risk, higher equity, and reward. But with most startups going to zero, where does it make sense to be hung up on equity as part of total comp?
I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way. And I think that's what's the sweet spot to join a startup to maximize your equity outcome. So like if you were looking at it like you had 1,000 at bats, you'd probably just choose like a seed startup when you're the first like 3 to 5 employees because you're going to get the most equity. Actually, you'd probably found your own, but let's take that out of the question. If I'm an employee who in my career probably only has 5 to 7 at bats and you're trying to like kind of look at it like it's almost like you're gambling, what's the best risk adjusted return here? I think it's post Series B with more than 20 million on the balance sheet, between 75 and 150 existing employees, annual revenue growth rate above 100%, ideally above 150, 200. And they just repriced their 409A after doing a raise. So valuation may be somewhere between 50 million and 100 million. So that's the formula that I've written out, and I've tried to do it myself. The reason why is recent funding. That means you're not going to go out of business anytime soon. Because if you take a look at your resume, you want to say, I had at least an 18-month to 2-year run there where I was able to add value, I was able to make a name for myself, and I was able to progress and build within the org. So it has less survival risk. And they're probably financed better than their competition, right? So if you just raise money, you have cash in the balance sheet, and your competitors may not have just raised money. The next thing is huge. It's that product market fit is established. So when I think about taking equity, I largely think, has this company hit an inflection point where they have what they call PMF? And so if an investor gave you a healthy Series B, they probably do have PMF. And Series B is also around the time where I think there's the most equity upside. And so major equity upside is still there. It's still on the table. The largest absolute pops usually happen between B to C or C to D. The larger pops usually don't happen like from D to E, E to F. Those are usually more linear jumps in valuation. And a couple other things are like less quantitative when I think about this problem. It's that there are chapters left in the story and time for you to write your own chapter within it. So you can contribute to a company that's on this high growth trajectory. It's not like it's so big. It's like an Amazon where it's going to be like really hard to make a dent. And you're able to preserve that upside of potentially helping a company IPO and working at a public company if it all goes well. So like that's still on the table. It's not like you're joining it after it goes public. And finally, I just think like Series B companies are like maximal fun with minimal bureaucracy. So like there still are adults in charge, which you want. Seed and Series A, it's the Wild West, dude. Like there are no rules. Like they may be doing the accounting like in a spreadsheet. Like it's just chaos. And like it's not like the most professional of environments, but I also don't want to have to wear a suit every day. So I think like you have ability to see your contribution to make a real mark on day-to-day operations, and you can build without the red tape. So that's just my 2 cents, and a lot of that's probably a personal perspective.
Love that. Yeah. What personal perspective do you bring? Like when did you join your current company? Was it a similar time frame?
The last 2 companies actually I joined right after Series B.
Okay.
And they were both actually in the same ballpark of employees too. So 2 companies ago, cybersecurity company, I joined right after Series B. They just repriced their 409A, and I was employee 150. At this company, joined right after Series B, definitely smaller in revenue scale at that point, but I was employee like 74. And both companies, it was like a chance to come in and own a function, which was really big for me. And I think that happens a lot around these time frames of like you raise a Series B, you're going to go out and spend most of that on people. And they're looking for people who can come in and kind of be a step up candidate. And if it's a Series D company, Series E, pre-IPO, they're looking for specialists who already have that experience, have already done what they need to do there. Whereas if you're trying to be like a first-time CFO like I was, or you're trying to own the FP&A group for the first time, you can go earlier in the life cycle and get that shot.
And this is just a like question that I have because I'm curious. When you're the 75th, 74th, 100th, whatever employee, like how much equity are you typically getting in the company? I know it obviously varies, but like what does that look like?
It's a great question. It depends on the position. And at that point, you should probably still be asking for it on like a fully diluted basis, which means like give me the percentage of what that equals to the company. But as the company gets bigger and you're post Series D, I'd say, maybe even post Series C, you should just start asking about what it means on like, hey, translate this into dollars for me. What does that mean? Because it's going to seem really small on paper if they tell you have like 0.001%, but that could be worth like 50 grand in the money today. Earlier on though, I do think people make a mistake of not asking like what the denominator in the equation is. So like I recently had a friend who joined a Series A actually, and they came to me and said, it's funny, like some people are like, oh, you're the friend that I go to for legal advice. Like that's my friend Mike, or you're the person I go to for car advice. That's my friend Greg. I'm the person people go to for equity grant advice. Like that, I guess that's the corner I've inevitably like found myself on. But you should ask for what the denominator is. And what I mean by that is like, he said, hey, I just got 5,000 shares. Isn't that sick? And I'm like, well, what's that over? Like, I can't tell
out
you.
Of how many? Yeah.
Yeah, out of how many? And he was the first finance person there. And I said, well, as the first finance person there, Series A, and I'm just throwing a number out there, I think I said to him, like, I think you have a really good case to get 0.5%. And if you were the CFO, I think you have a really good chance to get 1% or 1.25% if you're going that early. So it all depends, but like I would look at it more in the guardrails of like, what's the information I need to get from them to make a good decision?
Got it. When you need to free up budget in a pinch, where can you count on having excess cash to pull from?
Oh, the learning and development budget. It always goes like 40% used. And I don't know why, because I always have spent my learning and development budget on, this is a crazy one. PwC had a learning and development budget and you could use it for like gym clothes when I was there. So I remember I bought like a bunch of Nike clothes with that. It's like the gym budget and learning and development or wellness budget were the same thing. I wouldn't allow that now though as a CFO, but I feel like companies put that as a line item and then they say, hey, I want to enable department leaders to give it out to people to go to a conference, to buy a book. But then they just like never tell their employees about it. And so it goes unused. So I always use the learning and development budget as a potential buffer or tailwind to the plan. Other things that you can cut in a pinch are travel, but a lot of times you're looking to cut or you're looking for room in the budget later in the year. And just the way it works is a ton of travel is back end loaded because conferences tend to fall in Q3. Like October and November are super busy for conferences. And so it's like, well, you can't cancel on like a commitment you made to like sponsor an event or something like that. But sometimes you could turn some stuff from in-person to real life. So travel is another one you can do.
Got it. Love it.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Quick math, the less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. And back by popular demand, NetSuite has extended its one-of-a-kind flexible financing program for a few more weeks. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That is netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please do it, guys. I really need this. Annual planning season is upon us. That's right, my favorite time of year. And it's not just about setting goals for the coming year. It's about ensuring you have the right tools in place to measure and achieve those goals. As a SaaS CFO, I know having access to reliable, real-time metrics is crucial for my annual planning process. That's why I'm so excited to partner with today's sponsor, Maxio. Maxio is a billing and financial operations platform that helps subscription businesses reconcile bookings, billings, GAAP revenue, and SaaS metrics automatically. By the way, guys, bookings, billings, GAAP revenue, not the same thing. Got to get them straight. Because these numbers are the foundation of your financial models, it's important to have quick access and trust that they are correct. Don't let the complexities of SaaS finance and accounting slow you down. If you want to start 2025 with the right tools, check out Maxio by visiting maxio.com/run the numbers. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. Request a demo through our link to support the podcast, ya boy, and receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. That's maxio.com/run the numbers. maxio.com/run the numbers. Please, guys, I really need this. Okay, serious question for all my accounting pros here today. Are you doing what you were hired to do? What I mean is, do you have time to actually be a business partner, or are you buried in tedious manual tasks just to get your journal entries prepared every month? I know how that feels. Leapfin's here to help with that. Leapfin is accounting automation software that automatically prepares and posts reliable journal entries. And that's just the beginning. High-growth businesses like Reddit, Canva, and SeatGeek choose Leapfin to eliminate manual tasks, accelerate month-end close, and enable accounting leaders like you to provide faster insights that will help your company grow. If you're battling messy transaction data from Stripe, Adyen, Shopify, Apple Pay, and other PSPs, and then battling again to get it all into NetSuite, go to leapfin.com to watch their short product intro video. And if you like what you see, request a 15-minute conversation to learn how accounting automation can help you and your team. Check out leapfin.com today. That's leap like jump, fin like shark. I just made that up. I hope they're okay with it. Leapfin.com.
All right. Next up, as an aspiring CFO, what path would lead me to gaining all the needed experience to run a $100 million plus SaaS company?
Well, I've never personally been a CFO at a company bigger than 100 million in revenue, but here's my take just to becoming one. I think there are different routes you can go. You can go the pure accounting route where like you're a controller who wants to step up to take a more strategic and analytical role. You can go the investment banker from outside or PE person from outside route where you have like a corporate development background and you know how to shape the business to look really good on paper and maybe acquire other businesses from the outside. Or you could go like the FP&A sales ops route. And that's the route that I went. I'm biased, I think, but why I think it's a good path is that you get to essentially get stamps on your CFO passport along the way. And what I mean is that you learn how the organization functions by taking on different capacities that are tangential to one another. So like maybe one year you're helping the CRO forecast their pipeline and you're running the weekly sales calls. Like that's very important information to be able to understand and explain as a CFO as you get to that point. Then maybe you run, marketing ops and you're helping the CMO with like, how do I work backwards to create a pipeline budget based on attribution and put dollars behind it? And then if you're running FP&A, you learn how you allocate resources to get impact out of them. And a lot of that goes back to a headcount budget. And if you work at a software company, 75% of the costs walk on two legs. And so I think like it's easier to fill in the gaps that you don't know. Like, I think it's easier to fill in the gaps that you don't know if you understand how to build an operating plan, but aren't as strong on the accounting side. I am not a controller. I'm not a CPA. And I knew that there were a lot of people brighter than myself out there who could help with that. And so that was like the first thing I went to hire. Even if I had to overpay, like on day one, I said, no matter what, I'm getting a kick-ass CPA because that's like my blind spot. And I was very aware of it. I think it's a lot harder if you're an accountant and you say, I want to get someone who has more of a dynamic skill set around storytelling and around budgeting and around all these other things, because it's not as straightforward in terms of like being able to download that curriculum from one place. So yeah. I'm definitely biased, but I do think like coming up within operations and strategy roles within the org sets you up well to understand like how a company brings its product to market.
Got it. And that leads me directly into another question I wanted to ask you, which is, as someone who started out in kind of the other side of things, meaning in consulting and private equity, and then you obviously made the switch to become an operator and are now a CFO. Kind of what was it for you that caused you to make that switch and kind of work with companies internally as opposed to from the outside?
Yeah. So consulting and private equity, I felt like a financial tourist. And what I mean is like I would pop in and out of companies and figure out the problem. And then I would give advice or I would come up with a valuation and then I would just kind of hand it over. And it was interesting, but I didn't feel like I was impactful. And I was giving like, a list of stuff to people and what they could improve. And you're kind of flying in and flying out. And I also just kind of got the bug of like how to build a SaaS company seems really interesting and really fun. Service-based businesses like consulting, I'll start there. It just had like this kind of cookie cutter model of like, you got to become this position, then that position and do your time here. And like for some people, they like that track, knowing like what they have to check off. I felt like it was a little too constricting for me. I don't function that well when I have to like walk this very narrow path. And maybe honestly, my personality just like was a little out of the box for it. Then private equity, I was not the smartest person in the room. I'll be frank. Like my Excel skills on the operator side, people probably think are an A. In the private equity world, I was like a C-. And so I reached this unique inflection point where it was like, in order to go any further in the private equity world, I would need to go and get an MBA. And at the time, I didn't want to hit pause on my career. I wanted to keep making money. And I had talked to a bunch of sales guys that were building tech companies. I don't think even like when I was in college, which is kind of weird, like nobody told me like you can go and do finance at a tech company. Everybody said like you should go work for a Big Four accounting place. You should go try to be an investment banker. But like people, I don't know why it didn't get enough airtime, like in college classrooms. People never said you could have a really good career helping tech companies grow with a finance background. Like I knew tech companies were out there, but I didn't know they wanted a finance guy. So I made the change over. And I think that's where I found what I call like personal product market fit or CJ product market fit, where I was like, damn, I'm like way better at this, and what I'm able to bring to the table and talk about is way more useful to creating value here than these other jobs. So I haven't left since. I'm curious. So like, has the tide shifted at all? Do they tell you in classrooms now in college, like you can go and help run a tech company?
I was just gonna say, like, I think what you just said is true to this day. I think like the investment banking, consulting, accounting route is like pushed pretty firmly on us at BC at least. And no one really talks about, like, I didn't even know what FP&A was or like any of that stuff from any of my classes. It's all just these very like corporate, like cog in a wheel jobs are the ones that are kind of really,
Yeah.
really pushed on us, I feel like. But sorry, I say that as someone that will be doing investment banking next year, but yeah.
I thought it was like investment banking or Big Four accounting or bust, and I'd be like a total failure. And I remember how nervous I was going into the interviews for.
Oh yeah.
I was interviewing for PwC's risk consulting group at the time. I think like 38 people just from BC applied for like 3 spots. And I remember my buddy, Big B, Brendan, before he ended up going to a Big Four accounting firm. He was like, dude, you only need 1 spot, man. You only need 1. You don't need all 3. You just need 1. And I remember when I got it, I was so relieved. But it's just like such a competitive environment to get these jobs. And I just wish I knew that like my skills and like doing corporate finance and having more of an entrepreneurial mind, like it would have fit somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. Like, it's so crazy because, and I don't know if this was true with you, but nowadays, like, people, like, the recruitment process for a 2025 internship was happening during like January 2024. So like it was happening during the winter of my sophomore year for the internship that will be going into my senior year of college. Like, it is crazy. So all of a sudden you have a bunch of sophomores that are just like enjoying their transition into college, and all of a sudden everyone's just in suits and attending like networking events and hire views and super days, and it's just crazy how it all hits you at once. But you got to do it because that's like, it just feels like that's what everyone is doing, so you don't want to miss out on it, you know?
That's what keeps throwing me for a loop. Why I keep thinking you're going into your senior year, Charlie,
Yeah.
because you told me that you had an investment banking internship the following summer. I'm like, they're locking in people like 18 months in advance.
It's nuts. It was actually 18. I got my offer in January, and I'll be starting May of like a year and a half later. It's insane. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you can learn a ton at those roles. I'm very biased. I think the best place to start your career is at a big company because you learn how to be a professional, but the best place to end it and to make money is at a smaller company.
Yeah. And that's my long-term plan, is like get in there for a couple of years, learn what there is to learn how to be a professional, like, and then get out.
Yeah.
All right.
What do we got next?
Do you have to sell to the enterprise to be a public SaaS company?
Ooh, I think this is like one of the biggest misconceptions about companies that go public, that you need to have this huge, heavy field sales motion with these massive quotas and people holding the bag and selling like these multi-million-dollar deals. Now, I think eventually you do have to be able to sell to all segments, so enterprise, mid-market, and SMB. But no, at least not at first. Like a company like a Dropbox went public, and I don't think they had an inkling of an enterprise motion. Maybe they did, and I'm a total idiot. But companies like Cloudflare, they were pretty small in terms of the customers and average deal size. I mean, GitLab was selling some to even kind of a consumer motion. So I don't think you need to have an enterprise motion off the bat. I would actually challenge people to look at the customer counts for a lot of these large market cap software companies and see how many of their customers actually fall in like the plus 100K deal bucket. You looked at that, Charlie, for us, and the plus 1 million bucket. I think they'll be shocked at how many are outside of that. Like I really do think that the long tail of customers, smaller customers, make up a disproportional amount of revenue at a lot of these tech companies.
Yeah, well said. Definitely. What does the line mean? The gross profit is where the race is measured.
Yeah, this is a great quote. One of the readers put this in Substack. The gross profit is where the race is measured. I rephrase it a bit like gross profit is where the race starts. What it means is that if you have like a shitty way in which you're bringing your product to market, like serving your customers. Like maybe you're an AI company where the large language models that you're tapping into are just like have an onerous cost burden, or your customer support costs are very high, or your professional services for implementation are high. That leaves a lot less for you to spend on OpEx to actually grow the company. So I think of cost of goods sold as what do you need to maintain a customer, keep them happy, and retain them over time. And then the rest of it is for growth and innovation. And then whatever is left over drops to the bottom, and that's your profit. And investors want every company to have this long-term operating model where eventually it spits out 25% at the bottom, 25% or more. So I call it like the quest to 25%. How do you get to 25% profit margins? And if you have a gross margin of 60%, it's going to be really hard to get the bottom to still come up with 25%. So in many ways, gross profit is just where the race starts. If you're starting from like a 60% gross profit margin, it's going to be a tough race, and you're going to have to keep up like a breakneck efficient speed.
So, and I looked into this a little bit when I was interviewing at like software related investment banking shops, but like, what exactly does cost of goods sold look like for SaaS companies? Because obviously it's very different than like a company that makes physical items, right?
Yeah.
So
There are no widgets, right?
Yeah, is it like database expenses and like customer support stuff, or like what is that cost of goods sold made of?
So at tech companies, I bucket cost of goods sold into 3 categories. You've got your people, so that's your support professionals. They pick up the phone for break fix type issues, forgot my login, etc. Then you have your AWS, GCP, Azure, your like hosting cloud infrastructure costs. Some companies will also put Snowflake up there, or maybe there's a MongoDB cost somewhere in there, but usually that's in R&D. And then the third one is APIs. So like connections to other stuff to actually bring your, like make your product real. A lot of companies don't actually own all the data that they use and serve up in their product, and they have to work with third parties to bring that in. So like if you're a thin UI layer on top of something that has to suck in information from the outside, that's going to drive up your cost of goods sold. But if you own it and you have a true data moat, that'll help you get more leverage in your model. So yeah, just to recap, it's people, customer support, it's hosting and infrastructure costs, and then APIs and data feeds.
Got it. All right. Who are your favorite writers?
My favorite writer is Bill Simmons, but he doesn't write anymore. He just podcasts. So I listen to him a lot. I really like Tamaz Tongas formerly of Redpoint, now of Theory Ventures. He was one of the people who inspired me to start writing and put myself out there online. I love his pieces on business models, monetization, and metrics. I really like Alex Clayton from Meritech, Jam and Ball from Altimeter. They're all great. And then like business writers, my favorite's probably Anne Lamott. She writes books about writing. She has this one called Bird by Bird. I like is it Thomas Heller, the guy who wrote Catch-22? That's a really good book. And I like the have you ever read like Killing Lincoln or Killing Patton, like those books by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard? Those are good history books. So I read those every once in a while too. But I'm a sucker for biographies, and maybe that's a flaw because I never actually read anything that has like a fun plot line. It's just like a summary of some business titan or general's life.
Do you consider yourself an avid reader, even how busy you are?
I read a lot of short form stuff. I have a harder time with longer form stuff because by the time I'm reading it, I'm in bed, and it puts me to bed really quick. Yeah. But I read a ton of Substack newsletters and blogs.
Yeah, I love that guy. Is it pronounced Jamin, who does the Clouded Judgment?
Yeah,
Jamin Ball, is that his name? Yeah,
he's good.
Yeah, he's awesome. What are some questions you wish you could ask a candidate in an interview process, but probably can't?
Well, I get in trouble for this. All right. Number 1 is, do you have TSA PreCheck? And that's for 2 reasons. 1, if you don't, I don't want to travel for you. I don't want to wait for your ass. Number 2, it just shows like you don't care about your time, and you don't care about being efficient. It's like a prioritization thing. Like how can I trust that you're going to prioritize this other thing if you want to wait in line? Like that's just a shitty characteristic. The next thing, have you ever been punched in the face before? I'm a huge fan of like combat sports. I'm not saying everybody has to go out there and box or something, but like I do think there's something about like having been punched in the nose before. You're like, being called a name just isn't that bad. I'm not advocating for violence. I'm just saying, growing up, I've gotten punched in the face a couple times. Those would probably be my top two questions. I don't know. Have you ever been asked a weird interview question? You just went through a bunch.
They were like one of the weirdest ones I got, and I like really didn't know how to answer was, what is a misconception that people have about you?
Ooh.
I was just like, how do you answer that? Like, to this day, I don't really have an answer, and it's hard to say that without, like, the way that you answer that question really says something about you. I feel like, because it's how perceptive you are about the way that others look at you, and it also might reveal something that, like, do you understand how you come across to other people? But yeah, it's a hard one to answer. How would you answer that?
Ooh, I'd be like, everyone thinks I'm just really good looking, but I don't think I'm having a good hair day. Something like that.
That's a good way. That's a good way to deflect.
I would not say that. It's one way to not get the job. I think I would say everyone thinks that I'm very confident when I speak, but I'm really second guessing myself the entire time, which probably reveals a level of insecurity around like, am I just making things up as I go? But hey, now I have a podcast. Hey, you know what a weird question is that I hate when people ask it? They're like, what's like the number one flaw about like the way you work, or like what's something you're not good at? Because everyone tries to take that question, and Charlie, they spin it into some form of like, I just care too much. I just really care about this place too much. I take it home with me. I can't let it go.
Dude, that was one that I had prepared for investment banking. Is like a pretty common question. Is like, what are your top 3 weaknesses? And it's like, it's so silly because they literally like, so I was in a class called, or it was a club called IBA, Investment Banking Association at BC, and like they like train us to be able to answer these questions, and for all of them you have to give some corny answer that turns the weakness into a strength. It's like,
right,
like I have too much attention to detail. Like sometimes I'm so focused on a project that I just can't stop focus. It's like, this is a joke, but yeah.
I'd be like, this guy's a loser. The other one is like, I just try too hard. I will try so hard, I'll just be so burnt out. I'll work. Yeah. My problem is I'll work too hard for you.
I'm candidly, I'm pretty sure that was like one of my weaknesses, was like something along the lines of like, I work really hard and sometimes I burn myself out, or so. Like, it's
All right, what else we got?
Last 2. On the show, you always ask CFOs, what's something you would tell your younger self knowing what you know today? Any common threads from those responses?
That's one of my favorite questions to ask. And I feel like 80% of the CFOs say to not take it so seriously, like to not stress out about the come up. And I find that really revealing, because I feel like they only got to the spot they're in because they were so nervous and so determined and like took it so personally about this rise to the top. And everyone speaks to this idea of like just let it go. Don't over rotate. Like, you'll be so serious about this one deck at the end of a quarter and you'll think it's the end of the world, and you'll look back in 10 years and not remember it. But I'm also like, is that the reason why? Because at the time you took it so seriously that you got to this point. So I don't know if it's almost like one thing is only true because of the other, or if it's actually like they validated that those things along the way, like you should have just chilled the hell out, man.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I will totally agree. Even in like the probably 20 episodes I've watched so far, I'd say like at least half of them were like take things a little bit less seriously. But I think it's a lot easier to say that looking back at life. Like, once you have accomplished everything that you've accomplished, to say like, it's really not that deep. Like, you should have taken it less seriously. Like, it's way easier to say that once you've actually like done some awesome things, So yeah, I think there's 2 sides to it.
Part of me always like laughs during that, because like these are very successful. Most of like all the people I interview are more successful than I am. And I'm like, that's so easy to say. You're like a CFO of this kick-ass company. You probably paid really well. You probably are in a very nice house right now doing this podcast. Yeah. I'm like, I'd probably tell myself to chill out too now, but I'm not there yet. I'm still hungry, baby.
Yeah. That's good. If you had to give a college graduate advice, what would it be? Or I'll frame that a little bit differently. If you were going into your junior year at BC one more time, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself?
Well, I think the first one, I did do this. I enjoyed every minute of junior year, partying with my friends, having a good time, meeting people. I probably could have met even more people. I probably like found my group of friends, and then I wouldn't say we were insular, but like we all just hung out together. And I think you could broaden your horizons a bit, because now I do bump into people in the business world who went to BC, but I only knew them tangentially. And I'm like, we probably could have had a fun time if we hung out more back then. But the career advice I would give is to like be very aware of like what you're good at and what you're drawn to, because it was very obvious in college that like my strength was writing and it was telling stories. And I didn't lean into that. Like I did write for the school newspaper. I did like do some like stupid blogging stuff online, but like I didn't make that the main thing. And I didn't think it was like a real road to take. And now I'm looking at it like, why did it take me over 10 years after college to realize that I have to, like I had this ability to stack my skills of like, yeah, you're pretty good at finance. Maybe you're like a B+ there. You love to write and you're pretty good at that. Maybe you're an A- there. And you also like have somewhat of a sense of humor. Like my family doesn't think I'm funny at all, but some people online do. And if you stack all those three things together, you're kind of creating a category of one. And back in college, I thought that like I had to only follow that path to corporate America, and these other things that were special about me or that I enjoyed were not as valuable. And I'm finding that those were the most valuable things all along.
Right. So you don't have to be the best writer or the best Excel warrior or the best whatever, but it's finding that combination of skills that you're pretty good at that kind of makes you special.
Find a combo, because no one else is trying to. It's like almost like a Venn diagram. If you can create a Venn diagram that is like the Charlie Venn diagram, that's a deadly combo, because there probably won't be someone who's as passionate, I'm making it up, about like benchmarking net dollar retention rates, but then also putting memes on top of it, like with pop culture references. And also is like pretty good at the math that goes behind it. If you can do that, there is like a tribe of people out there who will value it. And I didn't realize that at first. I'm like, I have to compete with these investment bankers. Like I'm not as good as they are at these like DCF models. This is like, this sucks. Like I'm going to be like a tier 3 minor league player at best here. But like, if I can find something more unique, about myself, that's somewhat applicable here, that could be a differentiator.
That's awesome. I love that advice. Thank you.
Charlie, man, this summer, you're crushing it. Thanks for coming on the pod, and thanks for giving the people the good word.
I appreciate it, man. It's great to be a part of something that I've had the opportunity to watch so many of. So thanks again.
Run the Numbers is a mostly LLC production. Yelling an intro by Fat Joe. Artwork by some AI thingamajig. Podcast and video editing is done by Cleancast at cleancast.io. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of me, a guy who feeds his dog too much ice cream and has a history of net operating losses, LOL. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And also check out mostlymetrics.com. That's my newsletter where I explore business models and financial metrics. Thanks for riding with me. Share this with your friends. Peace.